But Oshiomhole was pushing down those who have the capacity to make the state great. So it was on that day I wrote him off. So for me, he was a junior labor activist and comrade, and a nocturnal bourgeoisie and desperate capitalist whose pastime was or is primitive accumulation. Obi is not an Oshiomhole. You know, if Oshiomhole gives you good money, if you look at your wristwatch, it's going to be at least 5 or 6 p.m. in the evening. But when Obi says good morning, we look at your wristwatch, it's going to be 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. in the morning.
In 2011, you ran for Senate seat in Edo State, but later experienced a disagreement with Senator Adams Oshiomhole. Could you share what led to that situation and probably face off?
Yeah, like I just said, I think that's the question is coming at the right time. My experience with Adams Oshiomhole was a very terrible one, in the sense that, in 2011, when he was the governor of Edo State, self-styled comrade governor, with his kind of sheer populism, carrying the people along and doing populist things, going on the road, take banana from market, eat, all those kind of things optics, just to give the impression that, yeah, he's really with the people. So a lot of people were taking, I wasn't though, because I knew Adams as a journalist. And when I was working with Tell Magazine, our office was Textile Labour House in Lagos. And Adams was then the secretary of National Union of Textile Garment Workers. Yeah. So we used to call him landlord because he was the one we were paying rent through or something like that. So I know him very well. I know him inside out. So I was never enamored of this is a populist system. But I felt that we could blackmail him with his public persona to perform, even though I know he's not what he was portraying to the public, So I felt one of the ways to also do that was to get into the political fray, get your hands dirty and all that, let's see how we can also help him, by way of this, what I call moral blackmail, to say, Adams, people think you are like this, so you have to do this thing, those who will keep kind of a check to keep reminding him. So that's why I decided to run for the Senate. But I really saw the true Adams. There was no primaries, but he imposed somebody on us and all that. Later, he invited me to. I've never said this to publicly because he goes about saying all kinds of things that maybe I was the one, but he was the one who invited me to offer me a commissionership appointment, And I had two or three times discussion. The first day he offered it, I told him, well, I'm going to think about it, And he was like shocked. You want to think about it when people will call their arm and leg, to accept your offer? I said, no, I'm going to think about it. Because I have a family and I have a political group, so I want to discuss with them, So 2 weeks after or so, he called me again. And I said I have my fears and expectations. So until I'm able to discuss that, I won't accept the offer. So he invited me to the government house, that we should discuss my fears and expectations. So when I got there, one-on-one, I said, let's start from your fears. I remember telling him that, comrades, I know that you are very garrulous, and that when you call an ESCO meeting for 3 hours, only you as the governor will talk for 2 hours, 45 minutes, and give 15 minutes to 18 commissioners, SSG, chief of staff, deputy governor, to speak. And that when they are speaking, it's not in tandem with a set agenda, you hush them down. I said, well, when I'm coming, I'm coming to serve the people, not an individual. Therefore, my views must count for something. I said, I knew I was going to blackmail that maybe I love money, so I forgrounded my argument with the fact that the second point that, look, I'm not interested in who makes the money, but I learned that when you give out contract, you don't carry your commissioners along. You just say, oh, at the end of Escobar, oh, Commission for Information. There's a contract of 500 million, which we have awarded. You use the word we to so and so. Please sign the document. I said, comrade, I will not sign such documents if I did not participate in conducting due diligence about that company. I said, I'm not just a journalist, I'm also a lawyer. What if it is a company that is not registered under Nigerian law? People will say, OSA director, a journalist, a lawyer, they are inexcusable defenses that people will not tolerate. I said, and I don't want to be put in that kind of shoes that I will not sign. At this time, he was already getting agitated. So, and I pointed straight to him. With due respect, I said, comrade, I will not insult you, but it is my duty to blast you with the truth, that I will blast you with the truth. That was my exact way. I said, I will blast you with the truth. I said, thirdly, I noticed that you have a cabal, that runs the administration. I listed the names of the cabal for him. At that point, my great friend, the very committed comrade, Oyerinde, the late Oyerinde, who was his private secretary, just opened the door. And I pointed straight and said, yeah, he's one of the cabal. So that one did not know what was happening. I said, yes, he's also one of the cabal. So that one was kind of, what are these people talking about? I mean, I wish he was alive. So these are things that happen. So he cannot twist the stories, So I said, when decisions are taken is outside the agreement of this your cabal, that there are a way you discountenance them and all the rest, that Edo State is ours, and we have to start this going with sense of purpose and contribution. I told you some other things which were a bit private in terms of his lifestyle and all that, So, but of course, you can already imagine what was going to be the outcome of that discussion. So he wasn't happy. Normally, he would usually escort me at least to the door, but on that particular day, I remember the date, it's in my diary, that the April 4th or April 12th, 2012, because, we had this thing, primaries, and this argument dragged on. And he already had about 4 or 5 slots, commissioners who were free. Some went to contest, and some resigned, something like that. So the slots were there. I think April 12th or so, April 12th, 2012, or April 4th. But it's in my diary. So then he went to, that's why I cannot lie about it. One of his assistants, who he knew through me, Mr. Rasmus Ihide, who he appointed, is one of his SSA, is aware of the details of this discussion. And then I went to tell my very good friend, Pastor Saigi Izeyamu, and Chief Oyegun, former governor, and Pastor Saigi Izeyamu was smiling. He said, comrade had come to speak to him about the issue. And he started by saying, Pastor, if I appoint that guy's commissioner, the guy will fight me for school. The guy will fight me. So the man asked him, what happened? So he explained. I think Pastor now told him that, but comrade, you are becoming a bundle of contradiction. What exactly do you want? You are the one who told me that there are people in your ESCO who don't utter a word. They've been there for 6 or 7 months. They don't say anything. Here you have a vibrant young man now, and you are saying he's going to fight you. Now, come on. From what the young man said, you should know that he's determined to come and serve, and all that. But anyway, that was the way it ended. Oyegu also said, well, as for him, he would not have spoken the way I spoke, but that if he were in Oshiomole's shoes, before I left that government house, he wants them to announce my name before saying even to the House of Assembly, because he knows that this guy has something to offer, But that is Oshiomhole for you. He doesn't take prisoners. He doesn't like, I don't want to call it competition, but he doesn't just like people who are respected, people who are hailed. Let me give you a practical example. For instance, if you are working with Oshiomhole now, then when he was governor, and people are saying, OSA director, the next thing, he will find a way to get you out of that space. he wants to be the center of gravity. The sun should rise and set with Oshiomhole. So that was his style, and he was demoting everyone that has that capacity, to be great. And that was the difference. That's all of them will say, oh, they want to be like Tinubu, but they don't have the gravitas to do what Tinubu is doing. Tinubu was who headhunt people he spot great talent from, and promote them. But Oshiomhole was pushing down those who have the capacity to make the state great. So it was on that day I wrote him off. And I think since that 2012, I don't think I've never been in a public space with him, certainly one-on-one. Maybe I've seen a public space maybe once or twice, So my feeling is that Oshiomhole is somebody that gives a different impression by himself publicly, and a real person is far worse, and some of us who were journalists know about all these deficiencies. So for me, he was a junior labor activist and comrade, and a nocturnal bourgeoisie and desperate capitalist whose pastime was or is primitive accumulation.
So how will you describe his leadership style generally?
No, he was
from NLC president, a comrade president, a comrade governor, and when he now delved into mainstream politics.
Yeah, the truth was that you must give it to him. The man has native intelligence. His academic pedigree is Wrêtchêd. There's no verifiable record of any academic record of him. You realize that was one of the issues when he became governor. And they said he has no academic certificate and all the rest. And he said he has one, And when the court challenged him, he said he didn't collect it, so they should get a copy from the Minister of Education. Was it a sheer coincidence that particular department of the Ministry of Education caught fire, got burned down? Minister of Education, Yaro, very close to my father's house. Until he left, because of his voodooistic disposition and belief in marabouts, he never repaired that place. For the additional 6 years he stayed in, he never repaired that place, that particular section of the building. So he has no academic, he has a wretched academic pedigree, and I think that's one of the problems he has. The guy has a kind of, people don't know. One of the reasons Oshiomhole talks too much is because he has a complex. He believes that if he gives you the opportunity to talk, you might be able to, offer a counter narrative that will be superior to his. So he tries to dominate by talking, no stop, no full stop, no comma, nothing, Not to talk of paragraphing. So at the end of the day, I would say that he's one man in the history of Nigerian labor unionism that has succeeded in using labor to recklessly enrich himself. Ask me any labor leader who is 100th as rich as Oshiomhole. We know of Imodu. And the man is always fighting people great people. Imodu is not only an Edo man like Oshiomhole. They are from almost the same village. How has Imodu been immortalized? It's just that the man has been immortalized in our hearts. But in terms of fiscal infrastructures and things like that, you would have expected that a man who was president of NST, who became governor of Edo State, there will be an annual public lecture for Pa Michael Imodu. There will be an institution or building or street or housing estate for labor people named after Pa Imodu. Oshiomhole never did any of that. And he cannot, because he's competing with everybody. He sees everyone as a competition. And he wants to be the only cock that crows in Edo politics. So as a labor activist, yeah, he succeeded in deceiving most people, not me, because right from the one I knew who he was, before he became a public person. But I think Edo people realized too late, Nigerians realized too late, or not until after he became national chairman of APC. Because even as state governor of Edo State, people were still giving him the benefit of the doubt. But it was when he became national chairman, they knew that this guy does not tolerate dissenting views. He does not tolerate opposing views. He does not want to mingle with people who he believes have superior intellectual capacity. But life is about the fact that you don't know everything. Oshiomhole is a Mr. Know-all. But in terms of leadership quality, he's very, very poor. That's why today, go to Edo State. What's the legacy of Oshiomhole? Who are Oshiomhole's followers? Whatever you might say now about Buhari, one of the most clueless presidents Nigeria ever had, we had fanatical followership. Whatever you might say about President Tinubu, he has made men. People fanatically follow him. There is nobody you can point to in Edo State as fanatical follower of Oshiomhole. Because he didn't make human beings. It's always everything about himself. Me, myself, and I. And you saw them making joke out of him the other day. The president of Senate. Imagine if Akpabio can be Akpabio now ridiculing somebody. So you can imagine how low that person is. Say, yeah, we have a colleague whose video is trending, massaging legs. That's what they do. So, we all have a private life. But if you are a public officer, you must ensure that your private life remains private, knowing that you are a beacon of hope to many. You are a role model to many. But Oshiomhole is very careless and callous. The way he treats...
Those words are a little bit hard.
Yes, if I can find a harder word, I will use. He cannot... You see, like I told you, that as a lawyer, I try to restrain myself about how I speak, If I were just simply a journalist, because some of my colleagues, if I live here, would say, oh, why would you say that? You're a lawyer. There's no decided case, in court to prove that this man is this man, That's why I'm even restrained. Otherwise, come on. I've granted an interview before, which was published, front page. He was a sitting governor then, 2012. If you permit me, because I'm quoting that interview, and I challenge him to take me to court for calling him a criminal, so that I have the opportunity to use documentary evidence at my disposal to disgrace and expose him. He never went to court. That was 2012.
Maybe he wanted peace to reign.
That's his business.
Or some people may have intervened on his behalf and say, this is your brother, there is no point.
You see, can you do that to a fashola and you tell you that, oh, there's no point? Because he has earned his reputation. He wouldn't take that. Yeah, Obi is not an Oshiomhole. If Oshiomhole gives you good money, if you look at your wristwatch, it's going to be at least 5 or 6 p.m. in the evening. But when Obi says good morning, we look at your wristwatch, it's going to be 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. in the morning. So I want to say that, one, Nigerians should ask themselves the question. All the things they are saying Obi did as governor, in terms of not just being frugal, but in terms of decency in conduct and his approach to governance. Did it just happen yesterday? No. This thing happened about 20 years ago. A man was finishing his office. They said, oh, we need to prepare what you call retirement benefits, and what they call it, retirement benefits, what we getting every year. I've not been a civil servant, so I really don't know.
Gratuity.
Gratuity and not their pension. Thank you. The pension was humongous. Obi rejected it. But in Edo State, we didn't have that. Oyegu was governor. They didn't do that. Lucky Gbinedion, who has the pedigree of a product of capitalism, unrepentant product of capitalism, didn't do that. But when Oshiomhole was going, he enacted a law. He sent a bill that was passed into law in Edo State for humongous payment of pension and gratuity that entitles him to be collecting brand new cars almost every year, every other year, a house in Abuja, Benin, what do you call it, medical bills paid for you and your 4 kids, for a state like that. But Obi didn't do that. Obi felt, I don't need these things, because the normal pension and gratuity for me is enough. Now, you have these same people in the Senate still collecting salaries and collecting gratuity. But Obi never did. This was the same Obi. He was given a plot of land in Abuja. It's entitlement. Anyway, as a governor, he refused it. He said no. You see, you can go on counting. Now, the questions you ask yourself, this is not a happenstance. This must be this man's characteristics. This must be this man's mannerism. This must be this man's idiosyncrasies. You know? So, and that's what we need in Nigeria today. Someone who can be exemplary in conduct. That is one of my biggest challenges with the Tinubu administration. You know? That you ask people to tighten their belt. But you guys are not. But Obi will first of all tighten his belt. You will see that it's tight. You have no choice. It's like, I give you an example. When Tunde Idiagbo and Buhari were, you know, Nigerians were obeying the rules now, as chaotic as Lagos then. But we're queuing up anywhere they go. Because, by example, now, but when you discover, it's like when Buhari came as a civilian president, do you know that some businessmen, I know of 2, who were trying to relocate outside Nigeria, that this man is going to come after them. You know, he's going to fight corruption, he's going to do that, you know? But when they found out that 6 months, he was even incapable of forming a government, of considering a federal executive council, they discovered that, this man has nothing to offer. He's clueless. People were stealing right, left, and center. They all came back. They all went back to business as usual. What's the point I'm making? If you are exemplary, the people will follow. That's why I believe that we have a problem in Nigeria today, both that of followership and leadership. But I believe that the leadership holds the key. Because if you are exemplary in conduct, the people have no choice but to queue and follow.